For years, Rack and Marvin have survived every threat that came their way. They've outsmarted rivals, escaped police investigations, rebuilt after devastating losses, and somehow managed to keep the Thomas family standing even when everything around them was falling apart. But Season 5 feels different. For the first time, it doesn't seem like they're losing because their enemies are stronger. It feels like they're losing because time is finally catching up with them. Episode after episode, the cracks have become harder to ignore. Their circle is getting smaller, their allies are becoming less reliable, and the people they trust most are beginning to drift away. The biggest question isn't whether Rack and Marvin can win another war. The real question is whether they're already too late to stop the one that's quietly forming around them. Let's talk about why Season May 5th be setting up the most dangerous chapter in the Thomas family's history. One thing that stands out this season is that the Thomas family isn't operating like a family anymore. In the past, they argued constantly, but when danger appeared, they usually found a way to work together. Now, everyone seems to be carrying their own burden. Rack is trying to build new business connections while keeping control of an empire that's becoming harder to manage. Marvin is still carrying the emotional weight of everything that's happened over the last few seasons. Kanan is becoming more independent with every episode, and Jukebox has her own battles to fight. They're all moving in different directions. That's a dangerous place for a family to be, because in this world, isolation usually makes people vulnerable. One thing episode 6 continues to show is that Rack never stops working. She's always negotiating, always planning, always trying to stay one move ahead. That's one of the reasons she survived for so long. But there's a difference between being busy and being in control. Right now, Rack seems to be dealing with problems on every side. She's trying to expand into new opportunities while also managing old enemies and uncertain partnerships. Every new move creates another risk. And the more people she has to rely on, the harder it becomes to predict what will happen next. That doesn't mean she's making reckless decisions. It simply means the margin for error is getting smaller. Marvin has always been one of the most emotional members of the Thomas family. When he cares about someone, he cares deeply. When he loses someone, he doesn't move on easily. Season 5 has made that painfully clear. Instead of fully processing his grief, Marvin seems determined to turn that pain into action. The problem is that grief rarely leads to clear decisions. It leads to impulsive ones. Every time Marvin acts out of emotion, he risks creating another problem that Rack will have to solve. And eventually, even Rack may not be able to clean up the damage. One of the biggest changes this season is Kanan himself. He's no longer standing behind Rack. He's beginning to make decisions independently. Whether those decisions are right or wrong almost doesn't matter. What matters is that he's making them without looking over his shoulder. That changes the entire family dynamic. For years, Rack believed she could shape Kanan's future. Now, Kanan seems determined to shape it himself. That's a natural part of growing up. But in the world of raising Kanan, independence also creates new dangers. The farther Kanan moves from Rack's influence, the less protection she has over the choices he makes. One thing I've noticed about Season 5 is that business isn't as straightforward as it used to be. In earlier seasons, the enemy was usually easy to identify. There was always someone trying to take territory or seize control. Now the situation feels much more complicated. Partnerships are forming. New opportunities are appearing. Old rivalries haven't disappeared. Everyone seems to have multiple motivations. That makes every alliance more fragile. One wrong decision could cause everything to unravel. Money, territory, influence. Those things have always mattered in raising Kanan. But this season keeps emphasizing something even more important.
Trust.
Who can Rack trust? Who can Marvin trust? Who can Kanan trust? Those questions don't have easy answers anymore. Every character seems to be wondering whether the people around them truly have their best interests at heart. That's often how major conflicts begin. Not with violence. With uncertainty. One reason the Thomas family survived so many difficult situations is because, despite everything, they usually believed they were fighting for each other. That belief doesn't feel as strong anymore. Everyone still loves each other. But love doesn't automatically create unity. Sometimes people love each other and still disagree about the future. That's exactly what Season 5 appears to: different goals, different priorities, different ideas about survival. Those differences could eventually become impossible to ignore. Here's something interesting. Not every enemy needs to rush into battle. Sometimes patience is the most effective strategy. If Rack's rivals see that the Thomas family is already under pressure, why would they attack too early? It may be smarter to wait. Let the family become more divided. Let business become more unstable. Let trust slowly disappear. Then strike when everyone is already exhausted. That's why the current situation feels so dangerous. The biggest threat may not be what we can see. It may be what's waiting for the perfect moment. Marvin has shown incredible loyalty over the years. But loyalty becomes harder to maintain when grief keeps building. If another tragedy hits the Thomas family, Marvin may finally reach the point where emotion overrides judgment. That wouldn't make him weak. It would make him human. The problem is that emotional decisions often carry consequences far beyond what anyone expects. Rack has always believed that if she could stay calm, stay focused, and stay ahead of everyone else, she'd eventually find a solution. Most of the time, she's been right. But every leader eventually reaches a moment where they can't control everything. Season 5 feels like it's pushing Rack toward that moment. Not because she's becoming less intelligent, because there are simply too many moving pieces. Even the smartest person can't predict every outcome forever. One thing I appreciate about the season is that it doesn't feel like it's building toward one massive showdown. Instead, it feels like it's asking a more emotional question. What does survival actually cost? Rack has sacrificed relationships. Marvin has sacrificed peace. Kanan has sacrificed innocence. Every victory has demanded another price. At some point, they may have to decide whether continuing the fight is worth losing what's left of their family. So here's my theory. I don't think Rack and Marvin are running out of intelligence. I don't think they're suddenly becoming careless. I think they're running out of time. Time to repair broken relationships. Time to rebuild trust. Time to keep the Thomas family united before outside pressure becomes impossible to stop. Season 5 seems less interested in asking who will win the next street war and more interested in asking whether the Thomas family can survive the emotional distance growing between them. Rack is trying to protect an empire that's becoming harder to hold together. Marvin is trying to carry grief that refuses to fade. Kanan is stepping into his own future, whether his family is ready or not. And every episode makes it feel like the clock is ticking just a little faster. If this continues, the biggest threat won't be a single rival or one dramatic betrayal. It will be the slow realization that the Thomas family is no longer fighting the same battle. They're fighting different battles in different directions for different reasons. And history has shown that families don't usually fall apart because of one catastrophic event. They fall apart because the people inside them slowly stop moving together. That may be the real tragedy Season 5 is building toward. And if that's where the writers are taking this story, Rack and Marvin may discover that the hardest fight of their lives isn't against an enemy on the street. It's against the time they no longer have.